time for Diary of a Physicist Farmgal episode number 18. As you can see, my good co-host Willie is here with me, and this is a podcast that is about my crafting. I like to knit, I like to crochet, I quilt, I sew, I make jewelry, I make baskets. I like to do all the crafts. Also, I am a third generation family farmer. I live on 170 acres in the foothills of the Arkansas Ozarks, where I raise grass-fed beef cattle. I also raise horses, and I have show-quality rabbits and heritage poultry. And I also am the haven for a herd of rescue mini horses, mini donkeys, and standard donkeys, and a miniature mule named Pumpkin who thinks she rules the roost. Plus, as you can tell from my sweet little co-host Willie here, I am fur kid mom to 14 dogs, 5 indoor cats, and an undetermined number of outside cats. And last but not least, I am a professor of physics and astronomy at a local university where I teach everything from the general education physical science course to the senior level astrophysics and meteorology courses. And I love to talk about science topics. So you're going to hear a little bit about all of that on this podcast. So we hope you'll stick around and check us out. And again, welcome to episode number 18 of Diary of a Physicist Farmgal. Okay, group, if you're looking for me, I am on social media as Doc Firewoman on Instagram and on Ravelry. You can also find my farm Facebook page as Buckthorn Farms, which is the same as my YouTube channel name. Plus, there is a Ravelry group for the podcast, Diary of a Physicist Farmgal, where you can find out about different topics. We just kind of have a chatter thread going, plus also any make-along information. We just wrapped up our charity make-along, and I'm hoping to get those packages in the mail at the beginning of next week. I'm getting them organized this week and hope to get them in the mail at the beginning of next week. And we're going to start a new make-along probably around the 1st of September. That'll be another charity-focused make-along. So if that sounds like something you want to do, please go over there and check us out. Also, if you're a new viewer, welcome to the Funny Farm. I hope you like what you see. And if you're looking for me in other places, you can also find me on Twitter. But remember, on Twitter is where I've been a lot of my political leanings, and I've got a lot to say lately. So if you don't like the idea of liberal snowflakes, maybe you don't want to check out my Twitter account. I'll try to keep things at a minimum in other places. But occasionally I do speak out about topics, particularly when it comes to protecting our environment and our earth and respecting life. But at any rate, so that's where you can find out about me. I hope you'll subscribe to this podcast and give us a thumbs up. I'm almost to 100 viewers. 100 subscribers. I was at 92 the last time I checked, and I'm going to do a little giveaway when I get to 100. I'll have a thread open on the Ravelry group when I get to 100 subscribers, and we'll have a little giveaway. Don't know what yet, but I'll figure something out. Anyway, so thanks for coming by if you're a returning viewer. Thanks for checking us out if you're a new viewer. And now we're going to get on down the road here and start with our finished objects. Okay. Okay, guys, I'll be honest with y'all. I'm feeling a little bit scattered since I've come back from the Mystic South conference. I'm having a hard time getting back into the mundane world, I guess you could say. But I do have 2 finished objects to show you. Now, one of them I showed you mostly finished last week. But I did block my Kraken Shawl, and I made tassels for it. Okay? Now, this came in very handy at the conference this weekend because the conference center was very, very cold, which was fine because last year the air conditioning went out in the hotel, so it was very, very hot. But anyway, I did block my Kraken Shawl, and it did open it up quite a bit to where you could see the design a little bit better. There's photos of it on my Instagram account, but this came in really handy. This is the Kraken Shawl by Alex from Two Hearts Crochet. The yarn is by Suutra Fiber Arts, and they're a vase base, and the colorway is called Northern Lights. And on Alex's on her webpage, she provides a link on how to make these tassels. If you'll see, I've got tassels here. This is some kind of a crazy lace jasper, and then this is amphibolite, and then in between it is some sterling silver beads that I wanted to put on it and take to the conference. this weekend. So there you go. It's got 3 tassels on it. So that is my completed, blocked, woven in ends, and washed, and all that good time stuff, Kraken Shawl. And that is definitely going in the fair box, because you know what? We're 2 months, we're going to countdown now. It's 2 months to the county fair, and we've got to put in our entries in August. So I'm starting to really think along those lines. I'm not going to have as many entries as I had last year, unfortunately, because my garden is kind of burning up with as hot and dry as it's been. Now, this other FO is one that I'm going to enter in Vanessa's Finish It project. Our Finish It make-along. Vanessa from A Historian Knits is having a Finish It make-along where you can finish projects that you started before April 1st. And I had showed this before, but this is a doily, and I have just finished it. I haven't washed it or blocked it, but it is a doily that I started last year while I was waiting on the rabbit show at the county fair, and it's got little kitty cats in it. Okay? So I just finished this. I took this with me to the conference this weekend, and I sat down while I was listening in one of the sessions, and I finished it. So I'm going to wash it and block it. I'll probably enter it in the fair also, and then it'll go in my gift box for Christmas gifts. That is just made from cotton crochet thread using a steel crochet hook, and I will link to the pattern. I don't think it's available on Ravelry anymore. I don't really remember how I got a hold of it. It was in a book. It was a free pattern for a while, but I don't think you can get it anymore. But I'll link to it on Ravelry. So that's my 2 finished objects for this week. So now we're going to move on to works in progress. Okay guys, as I said, I was at the Mystic South conference, and boy, I packed up a big old bag full of stuff to take with me to work on, and I actually did work on quite a bit of it. So I'm going to show you what I got accomplished. I will start with the thing that I got the least amount done on. What I got the least in my Tesla Knits periodic table bag. She is closing her Etsy shop, so if you think you want one of her bags, you better hop on over there and get one. She was kind enough to donate some of these to the charity make-along, and I'll be getting those to the winners next week. But this is Julia from the Happy Knitting Podcast. This is her Couch and Crackers socks pattern. Okay, and I did not do a whole lot on these, but I made just a wee tiny little bit of progress on my toe increases. So you can really start to see what this yarn is going to look like finally. Okay, I am just working on the toe increases. I am knitting these on size 1, which is 2.5 millimeter, is that right? I don't remember. 2.5 millimeter Chalgu red lace needles. I guess I could look because I got the package right here, huh? So let's see what they say on the front. These are size 1, 2.25, so 1s are 2.25. I decided to go down to a size 1 from a 1.5 because I was finding that my socks on 1.5s were tending to be a little bit loosey-goosey, so I'm knitting these on size 1. So I'm just working on my toe increases right now. The yarn that I'm using is a yarn from Craftsy. This is their Cloudborn Fingering. This is a colorway called Josh's Cat. It's just 75% wool, 25% nylon. Relatively affordable, inexpensive yarn that I had picked up just on a whim when they had a good sale going on back in the springtime. So if I can get that done in time, that will also qualify for the summer stash down if I can get these done by the deadline, because Julia from the Happy Knitting Podcast is having her summer stash down, and that would be qualified for that because this was yarn that was from stash. So that was the thing I worked on the least. Then the thing I worked on the second least, and this is in my Fat Bottom Bags Kitty Cat Moods bag that I picked up at my local yarn shop, Knit Two Together. This is a pattern, again, by a friend of mine named Christine. She goes as Needle to Needle on Ravelry, but she goes as Bay Area Knitter on Instagram. And this is the Haylie's Hug Cowl. This is one of her patterns. And I am knitting this in Honeybee Knits yarn. Oops. Hang on just a second. Hang on, Willie. Hang on, Willie. Alright. Oh, here we go. Well, I dropped it again. Forget it. It's Honeybee Knits. It's her DK base that she did as a charity yarn for her friend's family, her friend who had passed away from esophageal cancer. I believe the colorway is called Suutra. And then it's beautiful shades of purple. Okay. And I am knitting the Haylie's Hug Cowl out of it, and I got about 4 rounds put on it. I'm just finishing the first section, and I'm getting ready to start the next section. So I'm knitting these on some Knitter's Pride circular needles, or just acrylic circular needles. So I'm almost through with the first section, and I'm getting ready to move on to that drop stitch section there. Okay? Alright, so yay! So there's that. I'll pick up my yarn tag in just a minute because Willie's sitting on my lap and he doesn't like to be disturbed. Okay, then, well, I'm going to show it, but y'all are wore out of seeing it, as wore out as I am of working on it, but Vanessa and I are kind of trying to motivate each other to get finished. I actually got finished with Clue 3 on the Helen Stewart Curious Handmade Impressionist Shawl. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And I am down here in this very last section. So I've got about, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 rows to go. Woohoo! I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And then I've got the picot bind off. Honestly, I think I'm going to work on this tonight. I have been wore out, y'all, since I got back from the conference. It was great. I'll talk more about it later, but it just kind of took a lot out of me, and it's been really super hot and dry here, so I've not been really getting a whole lot accomplished in the evenings when I've been sitting down. But I've got 16 rows to go, so I'm down to the short row, well, not the short rows, haha. As we would say on the farm, the short rows, but these are the longest short rows I've ever seen. We're up to 500 stitches on the needles. But I'm not in the middle of a row this time, so I can show you. I'm down to the dark, using only my darkest yarn, okay? And it is very bunched up, as I said, because there's about 500 rows, but you can see here what this looks like. So this dark color is really starting to kind of come into its own in this section, and I can't wait to see how that works out. The light color and the green are both Primrose Yarn Company. This is Maple Leaf, and this is Headswell Roll. And then the dark color, which is actually multi-colors, this is a colorway called Area 51 by Kimarie Knacks. So I'll link all that information down below. And it is in my April 9 designs. Let me stuff this back in there. Willie, I'm knocking pieces off my sewing machine here, bud. Okay, this is in my April 9 Designs Playful Otters bag. Okay, and she's got some new bags that she started making. I think it's more like yarn bowl type bags, so you should go check her out. I will link her information, obviously, on the show notes. And I realized I forgot to put the show notes up for last week's show. I got all wound up getting ready trying to leave, so I will take care of that when I do the show notes for this episode, too. I apologize for that. Okay, then last but not least, in my other April 9 Designs Alpacas bag, or llamas, maybe alpacas, I don't know what they are. They're not spitting, so maybe they're alpacas. I wanted to work on this at the conference. I believe that where you work on stuff is important because it puts a vibe on your work, puts some good juju, if you will, in your work. So this is the Risen Knits We Were Seeds shawl. Okay, by Risen Knits, who I really like her patterns, and I like her vibe. I feel like if we were closer, we might be good friends. This yarn is one of the Tits Out Collective yarns. This is also by Honeybee Knits, and this is her interpretation of the Countess Ablaze yarn, and this is a colorway called Be Positive, and I believe she is still taking dyed orders for that through the end of July. So I got through, this is what I worked on the most at the conference, and I got completely through the first section, okay? So I got completely through the sprouting seeds section. It's kind of rolling up there, but you can get the idea of it. Okay, so now I'm ready to move on to the roots section, which is cables, but I had to kind of put it on hold because one thing that I did not end up taking with me was a cable needle. So yeah, and I'm a little concerned about moving on because I've got to do a knitted cast on of some stitches, and I'm not real clear. There's a chart there that you have to read, and I'm not real clear about what's going on, but maybe it'll make more sense as I get going. But anyway, so I'm moving on into, let's see if I can find a picture. It's kind of hard to tell on this first section. You can kind of see it in this picture here. So I've done this section up here, and I'm moving into this section right here. And I'm a little bit confused. I may try to contact her and see if I can tell what's going on, because the chart is only 15 stitches across, and I don't know if I don't know. Anyway, so I've got to figure out, I'm just a little bit confused on that, so I'll have to figure that out, but I will. It's just a little bit confusing to me right now, but I'll try to figure it out. I've never read a chart like this before, but it doesn't look too hard, so I think I can master it. But anyway, I'm going to work on the Helen Stewart because I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, so I want to get that sucker done. So I'm probably going to focus on that for the rest of this week, and then kind of set everything else to the side. We'll see how that goes. So those are my works in progress. I did not get any more done on my quilt that I showed you last time. So now we're going to come back. I don't have a lot of future crafting to show you, but I'm going to show you a couple little things, so we're going to come back and talk about some future crafting. Okay, my future crafting this week is non-yarning. I got enough yarniness going on, I think, in my whips. So my future crafting this week is I'm going to show you a couple of more quilt kits that I bought before I moved back to Arkansas from Oklahoma back in 2005. The anniversary of me moving back is coming up. I moved home. I actually moved out there on July 31st of 1992, and I moved back on July 31st of 2005. So I lived out there exactly 13 years. So, but anyway, so again, there used to be a quilt shop around the store from my house called Patchwork Place, and before I moved home, I picked up some quilt kits. The first one was this kit. It's called Hot Flashes, and I just thought that, now this is going to be definitely a challenge for me. That's a lot of different types of piecing there. But I just couldn't resist. I thought the colors in it were amazing and beautiful. I loved how vibrant they were. And then what the quilt shop would do is they would put together the fabrics in these kits. Okay, and this was back when batiks were really hot, so there's a lot of batiks in this pattern, or in this package. So you can kind of see there, I don't want to get them all out and mess them up. So, but that is something that needs to be coming to the forefront, because I've had that for 13 years and it's time to get it done. In fact, I probably bought them around this time 13 years ago because I was in the process of getting ready to move back. Okay, the other kit that I bought, let me take the pattern package out here. Of course, as an astronomer, you'll see why I've got this one. Moonstruck Stars. Okay, Moonstruck Stars. And this was actually designed by somebody in Oklahoma City for the Oklahoma Quilt Shop Hop. Okay. And then, again, they put together a kit of all, I don't know how well you can see, of all the colors that you need to make the quilt. Okay? Alright, so, Busy's wanting in. She's protesting. I don't know if you can hear her. But anyway, so there's that, and that's the chart for how it's put together. Again, that's going to be kind of challenging for me, so that's why I started with the log cabin first, was kind of ease myself back in. I haven't even cracked open the directions on these. I'm hoping there's some speed piecing techniques in there that will help me kind of move along and do better quality work. So that's my two future crafting. So if you're here for the crafting content, that's pretty much it. I'm going to have a few acquisitions, but my acquisitions this week are really non-craft related. But, so if you're just here for the crafts, I'll see you next week. And if you're here for everything else, we're going to move on to acquisitions. Okay, guys, as I said, and I talked about a little bit about last week, last Thursday through Sunday, this past Thursday through Sunday, I was at the Mystic South Conference, and while I was there, of course, they had vendors set up, and my friend Gypsy, she was actually in charge of the vendor space. And if you'll look at my channel, I posted a shorty video of Gypsy using her handmade flat braid, Icelandic flat braid weaving loom. Okay, she and her wife Marla have a Icelandic educational homestead in Callahan, Florida. They have been friends of mine for 20-something years and very good friends of mine, and I was very happy to see them. And they're starting an educational facility, kind of like what I want to do. They're focusing on all things Icelandic, as Gypsy puts it. And so I posted a shorty video. It's a really neat process if you've never seen it. It makes beautiful trim. So go check that out. But one of the things is Marla makes necklaces. I actually have my necklace on. Marla makes necklaces and sells them. Gypsy does a lot of metal work and woodwork, and Marla makes jewelry. And so I was very excited. She had posted this necklace online, and I had seen it, and I definitely wanted to get it because I loved the goddess figure here on it. I thought that was really beautiful. It's got Celtic knotwork on it, too. Then my friend Raina, who I was on her podcast, it's called Desperate House Witches. It's an audio podcast that you can get on iTunes, and it's also broadcast live on Friday nights. Again, pretty liberal snowflake bunch of people, and not for the young. I mean, if as she puts it, they're not even X-rated. They'll talk about anything and everything and say anything and everything, which is just right up my alley. But it is not something I would recommend for children. But very blunt and very honest. And they had a live podcast Friday night at the conference, and she had asked me to be on it. And she actually makes bracelets, and she was kind enough to give me this bracelet, and it's got little stars on it. And what's cool, you can't really tell, but there are stars on this necklace that match the stars on this bracelet. So I decided that was perfect. She is starting to make bracelets again and sell them, so I will get her information and also link that, as well as Gypsy and Marla's Icelandic Homestead and their YouTube channel, because they do little shorty videos almost every day of the progress that they're making on their farmstead. Then there was a lot of vendors there. Now, I was trying to, like I said, be really good and do this on a shoestring budget. So I didn't go just crazy at the vendors. But I did buy a couple of things. The first thing that I bought, and I don't know if it will all fit, is I bought this broom from Dewy Broomsquire. They grow their own broom parts, okay? And that right there is the reason I picked that one out. Y'all know what that is? That's baler twine. Now, city folks will call it sisal twine. Honey, that's baler twine. Okay, and then this is sweet gum, and I've got a huge sweet gum tree up where I buried my little mares that were killed in the lightning strike, and where I bury my horses. So there's a huge, I call it the mother tree of this place. So I knew I had to have this. And you always need a new broom to sweep out the bad juju so that the good juju can come in, right? So I was Dewy Broomsquire. They're in Dewy, Georgia. And I will link their Facebook page. They make beautiful, very distinctive brooms. Then, and I did not get a card from these people, and I wish that I had, they did really beautiful little prints of lots of kind of interesting mystical animals. But this is what, and I don't drink a thing out of a cup. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink hot tea. I don't need a cup. But my goodness, how can you pass a fox eating pancakes up? I mean, come on. Had to have that, right? So that's one of their designs, put on a cup. It's fox eating a whole big stack of pancakes. And there's a name on here. I can't read that without my glasses. So I don't remember who this was, but if I can find out who it was, I will link their information down in the information bar in the show notes. So those were the things that I picked up as part of Mystic South. I got some buttons too, but they're just little buttons. One of them's, you know, has got a beehive on it, and one of them says y'all means all, and one of them says love with the dog paw in the center of it. So I'll show those another time because they're over there and I don't feel like getting up and go get them. So, but as you know, my birthday was a couple of weeks ago, but this Saturday at the barn we're going to have a tea party. We're going to have a vintage tea party Miss Marianne has decreed, and so she wanted me to have some interesting gifts. Well, I already got a couple of my gifts. The first gift that I got was from my friend Susan, and she wrapped it very beautifully. Susan is a wonderful artist, but she's also quite a good photographer, and she happened to catch a very beautiful picture of my horse Flame. So let me show you that. And I was trying to save my paper, but I ain't doing a very good job, am I? And she even made my little card to match. So that's my mare Flame out grazing in the field. Isn't she pretty? Okay. And then yesterday, there's a young family that's got several children that are all very sweet, and the mother is very, very sweet. And they have ridden some of my horses before, and she has an embroidery machine, and she made me a handkerchief, and she wrote a very sweet card, but it's bleeding hearts on a linen handkerchief. Isn't that beautiful? And she wrote in the card some very sweet thoughts about why she picked out the children picked out the card with the dog on it because they knew I liked animals, and then she wrote some very sweet thoughts in here about why she chose to give me the beautiful bleeding heart design on my handkerchief. So I was very touched, very, very touched by that. So I won't read the card because it's kind of personal, but anyway, so those are my acquisitions for this week. Sorry there's nothing yarny. Probably going to hold off on the yarniness for a while because we're getting down to the short rows in the summer and go back to work in a little over a month, and boy, I'm ready to get a paycheck again. You know, it's hard to look at all this beautiful yarn and stuff on Instagram and go, oh, gotta wait. But it's okay. The paychecks will start coming soon enough. So we're going to move on now and talk just a little bit about science. Okay, this week's science thing is kind of a crossover into farming. I wanted to talk just a little bit about the Livestock Conservancy because Gypsy and I were having a conversation about, you know, the educational opportunities that we want to provide to people. And one of the things that people might not be aware of is there are domestic breeds of animals, particularly of livestock, that are also considered threatened or critically endangered or whatever. And the people that track that are part of the Livestock Conservancy. Now, one of the things that most people don't realize is how monolithic our, what I would call our agro-industrial complex is. So factory farming, whatever you want to call it, mass-produced food is very monolithic, particularly in poultry. So when you look at where our eggs come from, when you look at where our chicken comes from, that's basically a monolithic breed of chicken. All right? If you know anything at all about chickens, what you'll know is most chickens lay brown eggs. But yet, most of the eggs you buy in the store are white eggs. Now, and one of the things that happens when you start breeding monolithically is you start introducing genetic issues. For example, you know, an example from the horse world, or the ones that I'm the most familiar with, in the case of like paint horses, okay? Paint horses are the, you know, the spotted horses. There's different kinds of colorations, and we'll talk about maybe that, which would be kind of fun sometimes, about the different types of colorations here. I think it's getting ready to storm, and Willie's getting a little bit worried. But we need the rain. There is a condition called lethal white in paint horses. It's where you breed what's called an overo patterned horse to another overo patterned horse, because overo is a recessive trait. So the problem there is you will get a double recessive baby, and there is a terrible genetic condition that goes along with that, where their digestive tract is not fully formed, and they die. You know, they're born basically completely white, without pigment, and they die very shortly after they're born. Or if you think about in the dog world, you know, like for example, some Dalmatians are deaf, or some breeds of dog have hip dysplasia issues. So when you start line breeding, which is the nice word for inbreeding, you start having lots of problems. And so keeping genetic diversity to me is really important, because there is hybrid vigor is a thing. Okay, mutts, mutt dogs, and stuff like that. Hybrid vigor is a thing. So what the Livestock Conservancy does is they keep track of these sometimes very old or heritage breeds of livestock and where they're at. And they keep track of how many breeding pairs or how many registered babies there are and things like that. So there was an article about the otter hound, and I shared it on Facebook, about how it's actually got fewer breeding pairs than some of the endangered rhinos. There were only 24 puppies, I believe, registered last year. And I'm not an advocate of breeding dogs, but if you're trying to preserve a line, a species or a breed, I can kind of understand that. So, one of the goals that I have here is to try to focus on breeds of livestock animals that are on that list. For example, we have an issue with Texas Longhorns, and you may say, oh, but Texas Longhorns, I can see them everywhere. Well, what they've done is they've crossbred the Texas Longhorn with another type of cow to get what they call corrientes, or roping steers. Okay, so they have the wild coat patterns, but their horns are not as wide and long as the true Texas Longhorns, so they're easier to rope. So they're diluting the bloodline. So true Texas Longhorns are on that list. Suffolk Punch horses are on that list. I just made a contact who does Suffolk Punch horse rescue. And ultimately, one of the things I want to add to my educational experience is how to use horses for working on a farm, so harnessing and driving and all of that stuff. And Suffolks have always been very high on my list of horses that I wanted to use for that, because they have a notoriously really good disposition. I mean, a lot of draft horses have really good dispositions, but I like Suffolks. Also, too, Dominique chickens are a perfect example. True Dominique chickens are being diluted by barred rocks, and when you look at there are very distinctive differences between the coat pattern, the physical build of true Dominiques, or what the old timers call Dominickers, okay, and barred rocks. Because now barred rocks are a very popular breed, and a lot of people don't know the difference. But there is the first most noticeable difference is the shape of their combs. Dominiques have rose combs, and barred rocks have single combs on their heads. Rose combs mean they're kind of flat to their head, and they're kind of they don't stick up like you would see in a cartoon. So genetic diversity is really important, and if you're interested, the Livestock Conservancy has a podcast. They don't do one very often, but they will update it periodically. And they also have a really good Facebook page that's got lists. There's lots of animals. Navajo churro sheep are another one that I can think of. The Choctaw hogs, which are the mule-footed, they're not cloven-hoofed, they're the mule-footed hogs. There's where the Choctaw Nation, Indian Nation, or Native American Nation raises them on their land over in Oklahoma still. So there's a lot, and there's rabbit breeds, there's goat breeds. What they've done, true Morgan horses are on the list, that have not been, diluted for a more refined look. So, so there's a lot of different breeds of animal, or species of animal on that list. And so genetic diversity matters. Genetic diversity is important. Genetic diversity matters because you start introducing a lot of physical issues if you have a very monolithic culture. And the same thing is true with plants. But Gypsy and I were talking about Icelandic chickens, because she's really interested in raising Icelandic chickens. And so they're critically endangered also. So, so educate yourself about genetic diversity. And that's my little blurb today. As far as other science goes, at the conference I presented on the science behind weather lore, the science behind weather lore. So I talked about, you know, and I'll talk about that on a podcast one day. And it was very well received. There was a lot of good feedback from it. And I made some good contacts from it. And then tomorrow, actually, I'm going down to a university in Little Rock. They're doing a summer, I think it's a gifted and talented camp, and they asked me last year to come and talk to the kids about Pluto and the New Horizons mission, and they've asked me back this year to talk about, she said, whatever I want to. So I'm going to have to get something together for them here in a little bit. I've got the start of something, so we're gonna talk about, probably about constellations and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that's kind of my science moment for this week. It's kind of short and sweet. So now we're going to move on and talk about farm life and stuff like that. Okay, so farm life, it is clouding up, and boy, I hope it rains. We are so dry. Even though we had fairly decent rain the week of my birthday here and there, we need what my grandpa and my dad called the general rain. We need it to rain like nonstop for a couple of days because it is so dry here right now. It's pitiful. Very hot today. I actually took ice bottles out to the rabbits. I've got one rabbit that I don't know if he got too hot and he started chewing on his feet or what, but he had gnawed one of his feet and had a pretty bad wound on it, but I put some Vetricin on it, and Vetricin's like the wonder drug, you know, it's expensive, but it works. So I put some Vetricin on it, and while I was gone, Kathy was kind enough to doctor him daily while I was gone. Connie and Kathy, I want to give a shout out to them because they are so good to take care of things here. Connie is my neighbor. Her and her husband Brian have been my neighbors pretty much ever since I have moved home. And they live literally on, you know, a mile up the road from me, and they have to drive by here on their way home from work. So they were kind enough to let the chickens out and put the chickens up, and Connie came by in the morning and kind of checked on everybody and let the little dogs out to go potty and stuff. Plus, they just kind of keep an eye. When they know I'm not here, they're good to keep an eye on things. And then in the afternoons, my friend Kathy, who I have known since 6th grade, she comes by, and I like her because she's not intimidated by animals. You know, I have a lot of animals, and that intimidates a lot of people. I've had some pretty disastrous attempts at people being farm sitters that have just not worked out. But Kathy is great because she's had, you know, at one point she had 10 dogs. So she's not intimidated by lots of dogs. She's got a good head on her shoulders with common sense. You know, she takes really good care of the place. So, you know, and they both keep me updated, you know, and let me know that everything's okay, which I appreciate, because, you know, always in the back, even when you're having a wonderful time with wonderful people, always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about my animals and thinking about my farm. So I appreciate that. Yeah, so, everybody weathered the trip while I was gone just fine. It is very, very hot. I'm having to really keep an eye on water. You know, that's the main thing when it's this hot, is just to make sure everybody has access to cool, fresh water. I mean, my water bill is probably going to be pretty high this month because I go out every day and top up tanks and top up waterers. But that's okay, because who would want to drink old, hot, nasty water that's been sitting there? Jacob came last Wednesday and helped me get everything ready, and we kind of drove around. I drove up in the horse pasture because I knew I needed to mow. I was kind of discouraged because I thought it was worse than it was, but a lot of those little thorn trees that are there are ones that I can run over with the bush hog. So I started mowing yesterday. I mowed for about an hour and a half before what I thought was going to be a storm that would come over me started cropping up. And so I came to the house. So I got a good start on the worst of it yesterday. I didn't mow today because I had some elderberries that I needed to work up, and I did a little short clip of how to make elderberry tincture that I'm going to insert at the end of this farming segment, because elderberry tincture is a handy thing to have in your arsenal of cold and flu season remedies. You know, I came in, things are burning up. I think I have decided that the reason I'm a crappy vegetable gardener is I get started too late. You know, I'm bad about not putting my garden in until after school is out, and by that time, stuff doesn't have time enough to grow before it starts getting too hot. So I'm telling myself this now, and hopefully I can keep that promise. Next year, I'm going to be ready in March on spring break. Won't put my vegetables in then, but I'm going to start putting my garden in, you know, in the middle of April instead of waiting until the middle of May, because I think the reason I'm having such a hard time is with my squash and stuff like that is I just waited till it's too hot. So, but my pepper plants are making good. My tomatoes are starting to come on. My elderberries are getting ripe, as I said. You know, and the thing about elderberries, once you plant one, you're going to have 52 of them because the birds are going to spread them all over. But things are dry. I mean, I'm going to have to go out, if we don't get a little bit of rain today, I'm going to have to go out and water some stuff because I've got some stuff looking pretty droopy. So, yeah, but things went good while I was gone at the conference. We drove over and looked at the cattle. Calves are looking good. They're really starting to grow and look good. Horses are all looking good. Bo goes to the trainer on Friday. She got in touch with me, and her first opening is going to be this Friday, so he's going to go to the trainer on Friday, so I'm very excited about that to see how he progresses. Been working with the kids at the barn this week. They've been wanting to ride bareback, so that's been fun to watch them. We did Ride-a-Buck yesterday where they had to put a dollar bill between their thigh and the horse, and then I made them do all kinds of stuff, and whoever still had their dollar at the end got all the dollars. So Zoe won $3. But anyway, so yeah, farm is doing good. I went to an interesting workshop or talk or whatever. It's mostly just a conversation with this gentleman from over in Tennessee, and he farms and he raises vegetable plants, but he also has heirloom corn that he raises. And I had a short visit with him, and you know, it's nice to meet other farmers of like mind as me in terms of my worldview. It's a nice feeling to meet those kind of people. And we were talking about why do a lot of homesteads and farms fail. And I think it's because people get into farming that haven't grown up in it like I did and know the struggle. And they don't understand that it's work. And there is to take time off is a major undertaking. You know, you really have, I mean, I spent literally 2 solid days just going around and making sure everything was ready and set and fixed up and all that, you know, to be gone. You know, there is no day ever that I come in from my work, my day job, my paycheck job, and just come in and put my feet up. There is no day. It doesn't matter if it's storming. It doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees. It doesn't matter if it's 20 degrees outside. And the animals come first. Okay? So, you know, it's kind of like that thing I read about horses, waters have, you know, the little thing about horses and girls about, you know, things have to be taken care of no matter how hot or cold it is. So, you know, there is no day, even when I'm sick, I still have to go out there and check on things, you know, and so, you know, these animals rely on me. So part of that is, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, okay, it's just fact. I mean, you just have to make your mind up that that's what you're going to do and go out there and do it. So, you know, as much as I would like to, there are some days at work, even the day, I mean, and, you know, I usually end up having one day a week where I work and don't get home till after dark. But, oh, the wind's starting to pick up. Maybe it's going to rain. Yay. You know, I'm out there with a headlamp or a flashlight because I've got to make sure everybody has what they need. And I don't mind that. That's what I do. That's what I love to do. And that's my choice. You know, I don't have to have all these animals. I don't have to have any of these animals. But I want them and I enjoy them. And they're good company, but the fact is there is no day that I just get to come home and put my feet up right straight home from work. And there is no sleeping in. You know, there's no sleeping in. There's no, oh, I'm not going to go do nothing today, because even on the I'm not going to do nothing days, I got to go out and feed and water and check on everybody, and that's fine. That's my choice. You know, so I think part of it is they just don't understand. The other part is it's a mixture of they get in over their head financially, and that's very easy to do on a farm. I mean, that's very easy to do, particularly if you've had to buy the land and you have to buy the equipment and everything, and which I had to do. I had to buy, I did not inherit this land, but fortunately I have a job that, it's been a struggle for some years. It has allowed me to make ends meet. It's just me. But people get in over their head financially. And it's hard. I mean, to know how to fix things or work on things or what's going to work. I mean, I was talking with this person, his name's Lewis, or Joe, whichever one he wants to go by, I said, my dad did not show me how to do a lot of stuff. Now, he did show me a little bit, but, it's like with my learning to can all this stuff, I've had to learn that stuff the hard way. I mean, thank God for the internet and YouTube and all that, and my friends like Tim and my neighbors, the Shaddens, they've helped me learn stuff because, learning how to fix your own equipment, learning how to work on things, that's another really important skill set, learning how to do your own vet work on your animals. I mean, a vet farm call is never going to cost you less than $100, and that's if nothing really is wrong. So being able to take care of your own animals as best as you possibly can is really important. You saw the little shorty video I did with my horse vet. What I love about Dr. Angel is she empowers her clients. She wants us to be able to take care of those animals, and so she knows when I call her and say it's an emergency, she knows it's an emergency because she knows I've already exhausted everything that I have in my toolbox of skill. Or if I've got a problem, a lot of times I won't leave her a voicemail message. I'll send her a text and say, okay, I've got a horse that's doing this, I've done this, 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 and this. What else do I need to try? And she'll message me back, and usually it's not, you've done everything, just give it time and let it do its thing. So education is important, and I think that's part of the reason why I want to start the heritage skills and the homesteading skills stuff, because that stuff's important. I mean, that bloodline of knowledge is really important. I've spoken about this on my farm page before, but there was something that was brought up at that particular session that I was in, and I was thinking about, I have my little tractor. I have two tractors. I have a 45 horse and a 55 horse, and the 55 horse we call the big tractor because it's the one that would pull the baler or whatever, and then I have the little tractor, which was the one we usually raked on it, but it's the one I like to put out hay with and do stuff. Well, both of them are the same because you've got the fenders over the wheels, and when I'm driving, I'll usually drive in one hand and have my hand resting on that fender. And you can look down at that fender and that paint's worn off over from the years and years and years of my grandpa, my dad, my mom, and me resting our hands on that fender as we're raking hay or cutting hay or putting out hay or bush hogging or whatever we're doing. And that means a lot to me to know that when I touch that place, that bloodline of my family, I'm sort of making contact with it there. So, but anyway, so that's kind of where we're at on the farm. As I said, I made a short little instructional video on how to make elderberry tincture that I'm going to insert here, and then we're going to move on, and I'm going to finish up with a few final thoughts. Hey guys, this is Deborah, and I am sitting in my kitchen, and I am working on elderberry tincture today. So I thought I would show you what you need to do to make elderberry tincture. So the first thing you need to do is pick your ripe elderberries. So what I do is I just break off the umbrils from the stem when they're mostly ripe. There's still a few green ones on here, but that's okay. Then I wash them and let them drain in the sink in a colander. So I've washed these last night and let them drain overnight. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the ripe elderberries from the stem, and basically what I do is I just run my hand down the stem, or run my fingers along the stem and pull them off. And if they're ripe, they should just really easily work off. okay? So they'll just pop right off if they're good and ripe. And you do that for all of them, okay? So see how easy those work off, all right? It's easier to do it two-handed, but once I get a bowl or get quite a few ripe ones in this bowl, I'll go on to the next step. What I've done is I have just packed my elderberries in a jar. You can use any size glass jar you want. This is just a recycled jar that I had. I think it's about half a gallon or so. And I've just put as many in there. I've tried to get as much of the stems out as I could in the green ones, but I haven't been too worried about that. The main thing is you don't want any leaves in there. So now what you're going to do is you're just going to go get the cheapest get drunk in college on a Friday night vodka you can find, and however much that you want. I usually buy it by the half-gallon bottle. And you're simply just going to cover your elderberries with the vodka. So simple enough. Okay, so the size jar you want to choose, you want to just make sure that you either have a small enough jar or enough vodka that you can completely cover your elderberries up. Now, I usually let mine sit. Well, this is July. This is my secret weapon for cold and flu season. I make elderberry syrup, which is just a sugar syrup that I take daily. But when I feel like I'm coming down with something, or I know I've had a student in one of my classes that has been sick and exposed me to the flu, I will take a teaspoon of this in the morning and a teaspoon at night, or 2 teaspoons in the morning and 2 teaspoons at night. So you literally just cover your elderberries with vodka and you let it sit, and that's it. You strain it off at the end and bottle it up. I put it in just little glass bottles, dropper bottles if you want to, and that's simple enough. So I'm going to give you a few final thoughts on elderberries. Okay, so it's easy enough to grow elderberries. One thing that I would advise, unless you're really good at identifying plants, I would not just go out and pick these in the wild unless you had a definite confirmation that these were elderberries, because they can look like sumac in some cases. I purchased mine from a local native plant nursery, and I will tell you this, they're easy to grow, and once you plant one, you're going to have 52 of them, because the birds will spread them. I'm going to take the scraps out to my birds and let them have those, and yeah, so once you plant one elderberry bush, you're probably going to have a lot of elderberries. And of course, here comes Willie, because he can't stand not to be on camera. Say hi, Willie. So that's elderberry tincture. That's easy enough to make, and it's a great thing for cold and flu season. It is alcohol. If you're alcohol sensitive, I think there are some alternatives that you can use for tincturing, but that's what I use, just really inexpensive vodka. And the reason you use vodka is it's pretty much flavorless. And then you've got a great immune boosting thing for cold and flu season. Okay guys, so my final thoughts for this time, I want to share with you some of the experiences I had at the Mystic South conference. Mystic South is sort of pays homage to the magical and mystical traditions that are alive and well here in the South. We had people at this conference from all over the U.S. though, really. There was somebody there from Arizona, from Minnesota, Texas, you know, Delaware. I mean, there were a lot of people there, and it was wonderful to be among people of your tribe, I guess you could say. One of the really strong things, both in the workshop about farming, and I went to a couple of other workshops about plants and animals, and the evening gatherings were about that ancestral line. You know, here in the South, there has been, you know, obviously periods of violence and periods of terrible suffering and periods of really ugliness. You know, there was a workshop about hate groups that hide behind the veil of religion and stuff like that, put on by a friend of mine, and of course there was that overtone to it too. But you know, making contact or honoring that ancestral line that we have running through these mountains or running through this land, that really struck a deep chord with me, because we've talked about that before on this podcast, about how that ancestral line, that bloodline, that land tiedness is there. And I got to thinking about one of the things that has always spoken to me, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before. It's about, the quilts and the crocheted tablecloths and the china and the aprons and all these things that were part of that heritage, and how we need to honor those spirits. And so, the hands of those people who have worked those fields or crocheted that cloth or, canned those vegetables or whatever, that's our lineage. That's my lineage, and I guess as I've gotten older and my family has died off and I'm alone now, I think it's really important to document and preserve that heritage. So one thing that I want to really strive to do in the next year is to start thinking about a way to honor my ancestors through recording my history. I call it your story. Not history or her story, but your story. So recording, these important traditions and bits of wisdom that came through my family line to pass on to someone else. I don't know who'll get it, but somebody will, and that will be really important for me to at least have attempted to provide that, to move that forward. That which is remembered lives. And so, making sure that these stories are not forgotten is really important. It was a very beautiful, powerful weekend for me. I made many new friends. I got to see several old friends. I got to be with my people. And you need that, you need that because we live in a world where there's so much division and there's so much ugliness and hate being thrown around. You need to recharge your batteries with your people sometime. I'm getting a little tearful just thinking about it, but I made lots of new friends. I hope some of them are watching this, and these gatherings are important. These gatherings are important for preservation of that lineage, of that history, of that story, of that knowledge. It's also important for us to come together and, commune or whatever you want to say, because one of the ways we heal the ugliness and the pain and the suffering that is in the history of these places is to make it right, is to acknowledge the pain and to set it free and let us move forward. And so it was a great weekend. There's a lot more I could say about it, but I'm still kind of mentally unpacking it all. I'm glad to be home with my animals, though. I do miss my animals very much, and I miss my land and my mountains. So, so that's kind of my last final thoughts. Ancestor veneration through remembering. That which is remembered lives. So I encourage you to make a journal or write out on the computer or just tell the stories that are your traditions. Write them down, codify them so that they can move on to the next generation, or the generation after the generation after. Because that which is remembered lives. So I'm going to try to do a better job of that. So, anyway, that's all I've got for y'all this week. I hope y'all are all doing good. I hope you're meeting your crafting goals. I hope everybody's doing well. And until I see y'all again, be good to each other, take care of each other, and peace out, y'all. Bye.